everyone, thanks so much for joining us for this week's episode of When I Grew Up. On today's episode, I have my good friend Diana Doe with us. Hey Diana, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing fine. So not gonna lie, I've been looking forward to this conversation because all my guests are really interesting and I learned so much, but I feel like it's a different level conversation when you're on with a good friend. And I'm excited because I feel like we're just gonna hang out and talk
Yes.
about your life.
I'm so honored,
Oh,
truly.
no,
So
no, thank you for being here. So, for those of you that don't know Diana, she is from Atlanta. She grew up here in Georgia, basically. But right now, the reason she's on this podcast is because she's going to tell us more about her job as a school counselor. So, let's just jump right in, Diana. You are a high school counselor.
yes.
Yeah, so what does a high school counselor do?
Oh man, where do I begin? So you can really break it up into, I guess, three different main categories. It's going to be academic, social emotional, and then college and career. High school is a lot different than elementary and middle school because a large part of high school is one, getting through high school and making sure that you cross that finish line, but also preparing students for their post-secondary plans. And so that's kind of like the main focus. But it really is going to depend on that high school, the needs of that school and the community, and also what the leaders of that school think is important. And so, it really will vary depending on the school.
So I guess what I'm hearing, when I think of a counselor, a high school counselor, I do tend to think of like the emotional side of things, right? Like going to my counselor because I'm having like, internal struggle.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm hearing is that's kind of not the biggest part of a high school counselor. A lot of it is academic based and like making sure that they're on track towards graduation. Is that right?
Yeah. So yes, it is. And so for us, I think me too, like before I even entered this field, I I had an idea, right, of what I thought it was going to be like just from what I thought I knew and also like my own experience with my high school counselors. Um and the really big driving piece for school counseling is that, we do go based off of data. We believe that, the big data pieces are attendance, behavior, and academic performance. And so a big part of the social emotional piece is, things that are going on with students, outside of the classroom. It affects what goes on inside of the classroom.
Sure.
And so I think a lot of times people within even the school building, like adults, are kind of like, I don't really know what counselors are doing. Like, are they just kind of talking to students? But it is when we show them the data, right, of, how have we made an impact? I think, yeah. So it is a lot of academic, college and career, but also it is a lot of social emotional too.
Oh,
I think more than people realize.
right. That's so
Yeah.
interesting. I never knew that there would be like data to back up your position at the school
Yes.
itself. But I mean, it makes sense.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. Um, so what does a typical day look like for you then?
Yeah. So I have really different experiences, like I from where I first started and the needs of that school versus like what my day looks like now,
Mm.
and it looks so different because of COVID.
Right,
Um,
right.
and so typically, um, there are things that are already scheduled. And so, like big lessons that we have to cover for each grade level, and those things we schedule way before the school year. And then we have, student appointments that students can schedule with us. And so, um, my day will typically look like student appointments, random things that might come up, just like student crises situations. If we're in classrooms that day, sometimes like full weeks are just us being in the classroom all day long. And so it really will look different. A lot of times, like I think I know what my day will look like, and it is just so completely different. Um, and so, yeah, but a lot of it is, meeting with students, consulting with other people, meeting with teachers, talking to parents. We really are just like, I think, the mediators between everyone, which can be really difficult, I think. Um, but yeah, that's,
I mean, I feel like what you said about being a mediator sounds right, but extremely challenging and like I I feel honestly it sounds really draining. If I'm completely honest, like I'm like, "Oh man." Like
yes, it is.
but I mean, we'll get into this topic I feel like a little bit later in our conversation because, you know, in that kind of position and like, man, this truly has to be kind of a I don't know, a calling over your life, like something you really desire and are passionate about. But I'll ask you about that in a second. Before we get into that, I'm curious, like, what is the dynamic for you and your students? Because, okay, the reason I ask this is because for those of you that don't know, Diana and my friendship with her, our background is we met at church. And for the last almost 10 years, we've been doing youth ministry for a long time. And so, like, I know how you are with our youth students, which is amazing and like totally relatable, very empathetic. But I'm just curious, like, with school students, what's it like? What's the dynamic? Like, are you like their friend or like what is like,
Um, so I will say, like, what I'm like with our youth students, I am like with my students at work. Um, and so again, like it's so hard speaking to this year, but like I remember like even when I was an intern when I first started out, like I that was just how I was. And I do think um because like, you know, students can tell that, I look younger. And so I do think setting those boundaries, I had to be intentional about it because for me, like a big piece, right, of student relationships, right? If you want to talk about the difficult stuff, I really believe that there needs to be that foundation of rapport and relationship. Like, I never want what I don't, but ideally, but it does happen. Like, I never want my first conversation with a student to be about something that's like negative, I want that foundation to be there. And so for me, like starting off, you know, in this job, I really did want to I wanted students to know that like I am happy to be here and I am really honored to be their counselor. And
Mm.
so I was very intentional about like in the mornings, in the afternoons, like being out in the hallways and just like greeting students, saying hi. And so yeah, a lot of how I am with our youth students, I am like with our students at school.
Wow, that's amazing. I wish you were my high school counselor. Okay, but you said too, like, students recognize that you're younger in age. Um, does that mean a lot of your coworkers are like are older and more experienced in their field?
Okay, so when I first started, oh man, okay, so when I first started, we had a total of 8 counselors, um, but 5 of us were new, like, it was our first year,
Okay.
but one had come from, like, a different state, and he had done this before, and so we had pretty it was kind of mixed, but, students could definitely tell that we were a newer team.
Mm.
The team I'm on now, again, it is mixed, and so students are always they're so curious, you know? They're always asking, like, "How old are you?" And they'll, like, guess my age, and it's really fun.
That's so funny. I feel like it would be fun for you. I mean, it would be fun for me too, I guess. But okay. What about this? What about like Asian American representation with amongst counselors? Like, do you feel that makes an impact amongst your students when they're talking to you, or do you get what I'm asking you?
Yes, I
Okay.
do. So, um, I really do believe it makes an impact. Even if I am not their counselor, I think for students to be able to see faculty, um, that someone that looks like them, I think it's something, um, like, you can't really describe. I think for them, it's just like, yeah, like there is someone who looks like me in a
Mhm.
position of, authority or whatever.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so it's so funny because I think where I was placed for internship, like we don't get a say where we are placed. And so I do think I was intentionally placed in a school where there were a larger percentage of Asian students. Um, and also this school year. So one of my students last year, I don't know why. I think I don't know. Okay, so he does taekwondo. And
Okay.
so you know how they have the patches?
Yeah.
He like really wanted to give me his patch of like the Korean
Oh,
flag. And
wow.
so, like I was really appreciative and it's in my office right now. It's just like on
Wow.
one of my shelves. And so actually when like students come in, they're like, "Oh, are you Korean?" And even Korean students, because my last name is a little bit confusing because
Sure.
dough is not common, so
Uh-huh,
they're not
uh-huh.
sure. And so when they see the Korean flag, like I've had so many students just even this year, like point it out and ask me about it. And so they just get really excited. And like I think because Korean culture is, more mainstream now, even students who are not Korean, they're familiar with K-pop, they are like watching Korean dramas and learning Korean on their own, and they just get really excited. And so I really do think it makes an impact.
Yeah, I mean, that is so interesting. I feel like
Yes.
what you're saying is like it just kind of opens doors to conversation too without even realizing it.
Yes.
And I would imagine, I mean, for me, if I had like a Korean American counselor growing up in high school, I feel like I would feel the same way. I went to a predominantly affluent Caucasian school, and there was no Asian teachers at my school. Um, but all that to say, I feel like even if I had talked to them about like graduation and like my track of graduating, and like even not having to explain like first generation, 1.5 generation, like miscommunications culturally between child and parent,
Yeah.
and like, the the desires of my parents versus my desires, and like not having to explain that because my counselor is Korean American, I feel like would be so refreshing, and there's like a just something you don't have to explain, it's just understood. So have you ever encountered that, like just being like, yeah, I get it?
Yes, for sure. I think that's the biggest thing, right? Of like, you know, there are just some things that you don't want to, or like you're not even sure how to really explain, right? Because it's almost like the nuances of growing up as an Asian American, or it just as an immigrant family. Like there are just some things that are there. And so yeah, definitely have had those conversations with students. And you know, when I'm meeting with students, it really is about them, and like I don't really disclose a lot about my own life, but when I believe that it will encourage or help support the student in sharing, I do. And so I think even my own personal experiences growing up as second generation Korean American, it I think is really powerful. And
Mhm.
so yeah, I am really thankful for just even my background and how I grew up and the experiences that I had, because I'm able to really understand and like empathize, which I do believe that like anyone who is not Asian American can as well. But I do think, it's been really great, yeah, for me.
That's awesome. So you mentioned earlier in our conversation like internship and stuff like that, and even just now like how you were raised and your experiences. Like let's get into that a little bit cuz I want to talk about, what when did you decide this is the trek you wanted to take, to be a high school counselor? And yeah, I mean, can you take us back to even like your senior year of high school?
Yes. Oh my gosh, high school.
I know.
Um, okay, so I grew up in Macon, Georgia, and I know everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, the boonies."
Yeah.
Um,
I still think that after 10 years.
for me, like, it really didn't feel that way, but I guess. But yeah, so I did grow up like I went to the same like school system, K through 12. Like there were only like 4 Asian people, including myself and my brother, K through 12. Okay, this is really funny, but like I used to pray, like, Lord, will you send people who look like me to my school?
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I did. And like it's funny because I don't think so like growing up, I had an older brother, he's 2 years older than me. He was so amazing. Everyone knew him, everyone loved him. And so like it was very easy for me, I think, because people just kind of was like, "Oh, I mean, we're the only like Asians, does,
Right.
wasn't that difficult." And so yeah, I was I mean really involved in high school, but I never felt like a part of the group completely. Like I did struggle with like my identity as an Asian American. It was really, really difficult for me internally, but I don't think any of my school friends knew that. And like in my mind, that was how it was. Like they weren't just my friends, they were my school friends. Um, and so it was just kind of like a separate part of my life, I felt like. And yeah, in high school and like senior year applying to colleges, people would ask me like, what do you want to study? What do you want to do? And I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so people would ask me, well, what do you like to do like for fun? And I'm like, not something that I could find a career
Right.
in. And like a big part of what I really loved to do at that time was um I was really involved in church. I mean, I taught like Sunday school. I mean, I went to a really small church, so like there weren't that many students. So
But
but
you
like
went
that
to a Korean church, right?
yes,
Okay, okay.
yes. And so that's like what I enjoy doing. I don't know. But going into college, I think I just chose something just because. Like I was a bio major. I went to the University of Georgia, And even like me choosing what college I would attend was another big thing.
Oh,
I think I
really?
I think I decided at the last, like on the day that I had to make the decision. I cried so much because I
What
didn't
was the
know.
struggle?
Well, okay, so my brother went to tech.
Mhm.
And so he actually did have a very large influence in my life. And like, I actually always was like, yeah, I'm going to go to Georgia Tech. That's where I want to go. Um, Not because of anything else. It was just because my brother went there. And so I only applied in state and I got accepted into every school I applied to. And so I think when I actually had to make the decision, though, I was scared because I wasn't sure what I wanted to major in. And I was scared that if I attended Georgia Tech, because I knew I did not want to study engineering, like, no way.
Right.
I was worried that there wouldn't be options for me. And
Mm.
I know there are, but I think that was just my fear.
Mhm.
Um, and so to stray away from a plan that I had for so long, and like my parents were like, it's an easy choice. You go with the more competitive school, like this is easy for like in their mind. And it was really difficult because I think this was one of the first big decisions that I felt like I actually had a choice in. Um, and yeah, I went against, I felt like what everyone was saying was the, of course, obvious choice.
Okay, I'm gonna have to interrupt real quick because that's kind of crazy. Just only because I know you so well.
Yes.
Like let me just like break it down for people listening, okay? Like, um, Diana, part of the reason she is like so amazing is because she always puts other people first, and like she's always like thinking about other people, and on top of that, like, she's really close to her family. Like you guys are very close, and um, I've always admired that, by the way. But, and so I just feel like, first of all, I didn't know this story, and secondly, um, yeah, I mean, I can think back to even when I was in a senior year in high school, and you guys, like at 17, 18, you feel old, but you're not. And I feel like up until then, you don't have much choice, yeah, in the decisions that are major in your life. And
Mhm.
the fact that you went totally not what your parents asked you to do for me is like crazy. Like to hear you
Too.
say that. Okay, so you made the decision to go to Georgia, which was the best decision. Go dogs.
Go dogs.
Um, but so like when I'm just curious, like when you made that decision, were your parents like, I mean, your parents are so great. I know they're always so supportive and encouraging, but were they like shocked or
No, I think so this was I think I struggled the entire second half of the semester with the decision.
oh my gosh,
Like
I'm so stressed thinking about it.
like I literally like I cried a lot. Like
Yeah.
I would just lay in bed and like, Lord, what do I do? I really, yeah, no, like and I think because they saw how difficult it was for me, they definitely were supportive.
Mhm.
I mean, they they definitely like I knew what they wanted to do, but I really had to I felt like I had to think about like, okay, but if I do go to tech and I like what am I going to do if I don't have anything I want to major in or study? I
Right.
don't know.
Yeah.
Like I was just so scared.
Yeah.
Um and I think I had seen, and I know like my brother and I are completely different, but like for me, he's just academically, like things were a lot more just natural for him.
Mm.
And to see how much he struggled too, I think I was scared. But again, like, I think for me, I was just thinking about like, where do I think I will have a lot more options? And so,
Yeah,
yeah, they were supportive for sure, when I
man,
made my decision.
that's crazy. And it goes without saying what a blessing it is to have that kind of hardship, I guess.
Yes.
Like, it's like, where do I go to school? Everyone accepted me.
Yes.
but
Yes.
but yeah, I know. I'm sure that was like so difficult. I can't, yeah, that seems like a struggle. But okay, so you made the decision to go to Georgia, and upon going into Georgia, what did you decide to study?
Yeah, so, like, I'm like, I made this decision to go here, I don't know what I want to study. And I think, my parents, not really my dad, my mom more, she was just kind of like, "Oh, what about this? What about this?" And so I thought like, okay, dentistry is what I want to do. I love my dentist. Okay, like for real, I love going to the dentist.
I know you
And
do.
I I would literally go to the dentist and just like fall asleep because anyways, it's just so bizarre. And every time I left the office, I felt like I really liked smiling, whatever. I'm like, okay, sure, I want to do this. Like, I love teeth. I like how my dentist is, and I want to do this for other people, like make their smiles brighter.
Makes
And I
sense.
know it sounded so corny, but I was like, this is what I want to do. So I started my freshman year as a bio major. And I've never cried more. Oh my gosh, like Gen Chem was really the death of me, I think. And I yeah, I cried so much because of that class. Like, even okay, sorry, I just have to say this. For the exams, you have to show your ID. And my first exam in college for Gen Chem, I used to put my ID, I don't know why, behind my phone case, in my phone
Okay.
case,
Yeah, yeah.
and I left it in the bathroom at SLC.
Oh
And
no.
so I had to run to get my phone so I could take my test. And I was like in tears crying because this is like my first test,
Right, right.
And then like I get there and everyone started and I'm huffing and puffing because I ran and I'm taking my test like sweating and breathing hard. Anyways, but yeah. So but actually freshman year I took an intro to psych class just as an elective. And I had never had so much fun in a class before. I was like, this is what studying and school should be like. I am so excited to go to class every day. I was so excited to study the material, learn more. And I was just so fascinated. I really loved the course. And so, actually, my first semester of college, I decided to change my major to psychology.
Wow.
So it was really early on that I changed, but I had no plan. I just changed.
But that's awesome. Like, I just feel like like, I mean, the word is for me is blessing because, to find out early on what you enjoy and you just happen to take this class and you loved it that much. I mean, that is like truly amazing.
Yeah.
Um, well, I mean, like, what was it about the class that was so fascinating for you? Just what the material that you were learning?
Yes.
And
I
what was kind of that like about people? I don't like what was it?
it was really just it was like an intro to psych class. So it was like very basic, like talking about we were studying like the brain, the mind, human ego, personality, and things like that. And I was just so fascinated. And like I I remember feeling like I had never felt this way in school before. And I was like, this is what it should be like.
Mm.
And so because that feeling was so strong, I decided to change my major and told my parents, and they were totally okay with it. And I was like, I don't even know what I want to do with this, but I want to study this.
Okay, so you start studying psychology. And is there
Yes.
like a clear track for that as a psych major or
Yes. So there is a clear track, but a lot of people know and who majored in psychology that I knew at the time who were older than me, um, you know, like a lot of psych majors after undergrad, you do need to study or like study more, either grad school or some sort of specialty, just because it is so broad. And so I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I did make the switch. And then I was actually in like a campus ministry at the time. And she was like my mentor, and she was a psych major too. And she had said, psychology and sociology are very similar. And so, I added sociology later as a for to double major. And so, maybe you want to look into that. And I was like, okay, sure. And so I looked into it. And then I started taking some sociology classes. And then, yeah, I added it as a second major.
um so as a double major now, so is it psychology and sociology? Is that different than psychology and social behavior?
Yes.
Oh, it is.
Yes.
Oh, why is it different? Do you know?
I don't know, but I know that so the way that you can kind of think of it, I'm not an expert, but like what I learned in undergrad really was psychology is like more of studying like the individual and how it's kind of like specific and then widens, and then sociology is more like studying um larger scopes and how that impacts the person.
Oh,
So
okay.
they were like opposite but worked together. They were like
Okay.
very compatible, I guess.
Okay, makes sense. So, at
Yeah.
what point in your four years did you graduate in 4 years? Okay. Uh, in your 4 years of undergrad, did you decide, yeah, I need to go to grad school because I want to be a school counselor?
Yeah, so when I added sociology as my major and started taking major classes, so it actually became sociology that like really led me to school counseling. I took a course in sociology of education, and we talked about, so this was my sophomore year of college,
Hmm.
and we talked about the systemic issues in education and how there are a lot of inequalities that exist in school systems, just because, a lot of different things. But one big thing that we talked about was how schools were funded. And so it really, it's where you live because it's from property taxes. And so just because of where someone lives, it determines the education that they receive. And, you know, that really upset me because for me, it's not fair and it's not right that, um, things that are beyond a child's control can impact, something that should be free, public, And so um, it was really that class. And actually, one of my sociology, so I took another course, sociology of, I think like medicine or something. And again, just talked about like a lot of systemic issues that were impacting people differently. And it really like ignited something in me. And literally, like my friends in college will make fun of me for this. They're like, because every single paper I ever wrote after that time was about inequalities in our education system. And so it really was my sophomore year where I knew I wanted to go into education, because yeah, I was not okay with it. And, school is a place where students really spend the majority of their day. And so, yeah, I knew I wanted to go into education. I just didn't really love, or like, I didn't really like a subject area enough to where I wanted to teach. I felt like I was just very mediocre in everything. And then I thought more about like, what are the different roles in a school? And that's when I thought of school counseling and started researching.
And that okay. Now I'm like, okay, so um it's interesting that you bring that up at this moment in my life because I think recently, just, with all of 2020 being what it is, and the everyone is starting to open their eyes and be woke to what's going on around them,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to systematic racism and I mean what you mentioned, systematic education and things like that, and um, not systematic, systemic. I'm so sorry, but I was thinking the other day too. I mean, I say this very like I'm embarrassed to say it, but yeah, I think I'm very ignorant in these areas. Only because I don't look into it. I feel like I am so into like just what's in front of me, just being a stay-at-home mom and just trying to, help my kids survive and things like that. But I think I definitely need to be more in tune with what the reality of what's going on around me. And I'm just so like moved, I guess, inspired by what you're saying because most recently I feel like I've just been thinking about money in general, like what money does to people and what money means for people, and like even just like yeah, the hierarchy of money, it's just everything. And I kept thinking, if you're in a situation where okay, sorry, I'm just going to start over in this conversation. Okay, so that saying, like, you get what you pay for, right?
Mhm.
Like if you buy something cheap and it breaks, it's because it was cheap and it was made cheaply, right? But then I kept going down this rabbit hole of like, but like, what if you just never have the money to pay for it?
Mhm.
And then what? And then like, what about education? What about where you live? What about, like, and then you just have to, and then these students have to work harder than everybody else, but they don't have the same resources as everybody else does. And it's just
Right.
like this cycle.
Yes.
And again, I feel extremely naive to even be talking about it in the terms that I'm saying them in. But I feel inspired because I'm like, oh, you recognize that there was a problem and decided, oh, I'm going to do something, even if it's not like changing the world, but I'm going to do my part. And this is how I can help. So, I mean, Diana, I mean, that's so cool.
I mean, I don't think I would have been aware unless I had taken that course, And
Yeah.
so yeah, no, it's it's a lot just because like, like life is not easy, and it is a lot to carry just the daily things and burdens, and then like being aware of just everything else. It is a lot, and like I don't think I would have really been aware unless I had taken that course and like had done, my own research on that, just because I had opportunities to write research papers and I was like, this is the only thing I'm interested in right now. And so Yeah, that's when I decided my sophomore year that I was going to do school counseling. Did I know what that meant? No, but I was like, this is my way into the school.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's amazing. Okay, well, so what was next for you after graduation? You knew what you were going to do. You were going to go into high school counseling, or was it just school counseling, or did you know you wanted to be a high school counselor?
I had wanted to be high school counselor just because of, when I was in college and like going back to my home church and then moving and like serving in youth group. Like I knew that this was like the age range that I really had a heart for. And so I did want to go into high school.
Okay. So with that, like what was the process to go into grad school?
Yeah. So there are a couple of programs. So the big ones in Georgia are UGA, Georgia State, Mercer, and then there are a lot of like online ones. So I applied to UGA and Georgia State. And so they just, require the standard application, your statement of purpose of why you want to attend and study this. And then you had to take the GRE, which is horrible. And then you have to go in for interviews. And so UGA was my first interview, and I wanted to throw up. It was not fun. And the interviews too were just so intimidating because there are so many people, and you know that they're only accepting a small number. And then they had divided the interviews into group interviews and then multiple individual interviews with professors. And so it was like a whole day thing. They like took your picture so that when they're reviewing applicants, they can like remember their faces. And so, yeah, I was like, yes, I am not in undergrad anymore. It's just so different. So yeah, and so I interviewed at UGA first, and I actually heard back from them before my Georgia State interview. And so I did not even go to interview at Georgia State.
So like, did you know, like, was there a part of you that was like, yeah, I'll get in?
No.
Or
Oh my gosh. I think it's because too, like my mind is so, I'm like, okay, there are 4 Asian girls here, and they're probably not going to accept all of us. I don't know why I thought that. I don't think that's right. But I did think that, like, okay, they're probably gonna accept like one of us. And so I was really I was very scared. And because it's intimidating because you're interviewing with people. And so you're seeing how they respond to questions. And so it just, yeah, I was not expecting the call.
so in the interviews, do you feel like there was something that they liked in your response, or
So, okay, I don't know if this is right, but okay, I had one group interview. I think there were 6 other students in that one. And so
how
they
do you even
asked,
stand out with like, I don't know,
I
man. That's
know.
crazy.
That's why I was like, oh my gosh, what? And so the question was so simple. It was like, why, or it was like, what characteristic do you have that would make you a good counselor?
Uh-huh.
And like, I don't know, I don't know. Like, and so so it's like, do I want to answer first to show that I'm assertive, or do I,
My God.
like, what do I do? And so I literally, Blair, I answered last because I could not think of anything. And everyone was saying like things that you think would be a good characteristic of a counselor. Like, I'm empathetic,
Right.
I listen well, I'm understanding, all of these things. And I'm like, now I can't say that. And so I I said that I possess like a genuine curiosity, that I really do want to know more about people, and like I want to learn about who people are. And
Wow.
I think that's what got me in. I don't know,
Wow.
but like I really believe the Lord in that moment gave me the answer. Like I know he did. Something that like was different but like was so true for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I
I'm
think that
getting
was
like
it for that.
emotional. Cause I'm like, yes, that's
No,
so
but
true about
I
you.
was like panicking. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm gonna answer this question.
I mean, I really, I think you're right. I feel like it was a God moment because
It
I can,
was.
I think I can just put myself in your shoes, you know, and just like all these people are saying different things, and you're like, oh my goodness, what am I gonna say? And what
Yes.
you said was like so on point, but that's really good. That's wow. I would have,
Thank
yeah,
you,
I would have been
Lord.
like, her. I want her. Okay. 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 Interesting.
So if anyone is gonna interview, you can use that. Just kidding.
Hopefully they don't have the same interviewers. But okay, so you get into UGA and I remember this day. I was super excited. I was super
Yes.
pumped about it. Um and so like I mean without going into too much, you know, detail, but like I imagine like oh, how long is the program? The grad
It's
school program.
it's 2 full years, like summer to summer.
Okay.
Yes.
And is there like an option or that's what you do?
That's what,
Okay.
yep.
And then is your class like very large or
So our class was the largest they had that year. So typically it was like 11 or 12. And then my year, they actually accepted 21.
oh
And
wow.
then I think after us, the next class was smaller.
Okay. Um I wonder why they accepted such a large class or just
I think they had received a grant that year.
oh,
I think, I don't know. And so I think they were, yeah, I think they got more.
interesting. Um okay, so like I imagine like just grad school as a school counselor, gonna be a school counselor, like is a lot of like writing. Is that
No,
it's not?
no, it
Oh,
was
that's
weird.
great. I just imagined just a lot of papers and stuff,
I
but
wish. I don't know why I wish that.
why? What is
It
it?
was,
So what is it like?
gosh. Okay, the first summer was so intense. I remember just being in shock. Like, we had gotten assignments before our first day of class, like of how to come prepared. Um, and it was read the entire textbook before you come to class. Yeah. And like things like interview 6 counselors, 2 from each level before you come. Like it was a lot before school even started. Um, which I mean, I really looking back, like I know why our professors did that. And, you know, they were very intentional just about like us having to interview counselors because we created relationships before we even like I still talk to the people I interviewed as a grad student.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a lot. It was heavy coursework in the beginning, but then it was like, you know, we had practicum where we went into the schools pretty much right away after the first semester. It was a lot of recording ourselves, and like we would have to practice counseling sessions and like upload videos and watch each other's and critique one another. It was so, but it was, I mean, it was both like coursework, but a lot of like application and discussion. Yeah,
So, okay. I do remember the recording stuff where you guys would have to record each other
horrid.
or record yourself in a counseling session and then critique it. Like what was that experience like for you? Cuz I feel like that would be horrible.
Horrible. Yes, horrible. Because the beginning, before we were actually in the schools, we had to role play using our skills on one another. And it was always fun being the like student because
Right.
you could, you know,
Yeah.
and so yeah, it was not fun or easy for me. It was always awkward. And you know, to get better, you do have to watch yourself, and it's just so uncomfortable. Um, we would have to do role plays like in the middle of class. And again, like I just, it was a lot.
Yeah.
And that first summer, actually, we had to do actually a lot of like looking just within our own lives and how we grew up and like check our own biases, right? Because when you're in the field, like we have our own worldviews and our own values, and we never want to impress our own of what we think onto students because they're a completely different person than we are. And so it was a lot of like inner looking at ourselves and like how we grew up. And so yeah, and then once we got into the schools, we had to record sessions with students.
So, excuse me. So, like, you know, essentially, this 2 years of grad school is basically like training ground, right, for
Yes.
you guys. And so, how after the critiquing, after the recording and stuff, like, since it is training ground, do you feel like um you took away a lot of good feedback that you were able to like apply to change and be better?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was really difficult for me, and like looking back, I wish I had just been more like kind, I don't know, been kinder to myself. I think because we were in a group of 21 students, like you're able to see other people's counseling skills. And like for me, I kept comparing myself to other people in my class. And like it went so far as like when I would be talking with my friends, just like, just, you know, I'm with my friend, like I'm talking to my friend and listening to them. I would try to like use counseling skills. And then I felt like I couldn't even really be with them because I almost felt like I had to like reassure myself that I chose the right path.
Mm,
And so I struggled for a really long time. Just like with just being in my own head.
yeah.
But for sure, grad school really did prepare me. I think the actual experience at practicum and internship really does train you.
So what about now? Like, are you sure of what you've decided as a high school counselor?
Yes, I
You
am.
have to say that now. No, but okay. So like I know that there was a lot of, you know, internal kind of evaluation, right? Looking at yourself, self-reflection and I mean it sounds like a very like I don't know how what other term to use, but like a purifying process cuz it's like, you know, it's like you're like taking all the
Yes,
bad stuff out or like the biases and like
yes,
recognizing it and then trying to like revamp it and like um I feel like that sounds like just really like a you know a stretching and growing stage, which is not never like peaceful and it's a little bit
yes,
painful. But
yes.
through all that, like what were some yeah, like what are some positives for you that you took from grad school bringing into your career today?
Yeah, I think grad school really did set the foundation for me because they drilled us so much of like what not to do and like what to do that I I do have to like when I'm talking with a student and like I'm in my mind of like what I think the student should do, like I'm immediately checking myself because I'm like, well, that's because I was raised in this way and that's what my family would value. But like I want to hear from the student of like what's actually important to them because it could be completely different, you know?
Mm,
And so it definitely did. They were so scary, I feel like, and strict with us and like critiquing us that I do think it did really lay the foundation of like best practices. And
right.
of course, like I'm gonna make mistakes and I'm not perfect, but I do think it's really trained me well.
That's awesome. So I remember, out of grad school, it was quite a celebration for me. I just was so excited for you after everything because all the critiquing and just horrible stuff. Like I was just, because as your friend, you're like venting to me. You tell me like not all the good stuff. You gotta tell me like all the stressful stuff. And I remember like just being like, man, what it's gonna be so worth it after graduation. And I believe that it was, but I also know after the internship, so you said there's an internship right after,
Yes.
so after all that, like how do you go about applying for an actual job?
Yes. I was really shocked at this process. Because in my mind, I'm like, the way you apply to a job is you look for vacancies and you fill out an application and then
Right.
you interview. And that is not how the world of school counseling is.
Oh, okay.
Um, okay, so you have to, okay, so how it worked for us was the vacancies on that appear online are not actually true vacancies. Um, and so you have to reach out to the principals directly to see if they are going to hire someone. And so we had to do this like our last semester of grad school. So we started like in January reaching out to principals. And so I literally made a list of I think I probably emailed over 100 principals to see if they had a position.
So like just a quick question. So
Yes.
grad school professors, like this is an understood thing. So like
Yes.
they instructed you this is how you find a job.
Correct.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes. And so because with school systems, they you sign your contract for the next school year, typically February, March, April. And so they're going to know of vacancies then before the school year is actually over. And so yeah, I had to email principals and a lot of schools were like, no, we don't have anyone. And so it really is just a game of like, okay, until August, because you just never know when someone's not going to come back. And so yeah, that's really how you go about it. And so I heard back from the first school. And so like scheduled an interview with them, and yeah, it did not go well actually.
That first interview?
Yes, I was so nervous that I arrived to the school and I realized I left my resume and portfolio at home. And I remember like I freaked out so badly that I remember freaking out to the front desk people, and they were so worried for me. They're like, "Oh my gosh, like what are you going to do?" And like they were really concerned for me. And I was like, "I don't know." And I in my mind I'm like, I did not get this job, but I have to go through with it. And if I get this job, it really is the Lord.
So did you get the job?
Yeah, I did.
Oh my gosh,
This was,
I don't even remember this.
I think I wanted to black it out of my
Right.
memory. Yeah.
No, actually I remember the resume part, but then I didn't know that was that job.
Yeah.
Okay, so without going into too much detail though, like because I know that I don't want to reveal like the schools that you've worked at and things
Yeah.
like that. But uh there was like some okay, I don't even know if you can speak to this really, but I remember there was being a little bit of pullback when you were offered the job on your part. You weren't really 100% in the
Yes.
beginning.
Yes.
But why weren't you 100% in?
I think there were one, there were a lot of counselors that left that school that year. And so that was a concern for me of like, why all of a sudden? And I think I had just heard a lot about the school because like I'm still interning at this point. And so they want to know where I'm interviewing because they're, a part of this process with me. And like they make this face when they heard the name of the school and
Oh,
stuff. And so
interesting.
I think it was just I was scared, but
Yeah.
like my dad though said, Diana, like you prayed for a job, you received a job offer, so I'm confused. Like, me too. But
Makes
no, it
perfect.
was a great decision I made to work
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Um, and so I know that this particular school, it's maybe people made faces at this name of it because it's not a very I don't know what to call it. What do you say? What is it?
Yeah, so the school that I worked at, we were like 80 to 90% minority students. We were a Title I school, which means that the majority of our families are on free and reduced lunch because they are on like the lower socioeconomic status. And so I think there were just like preconceived notions about the school from people looking from the outside.
Sure. I mean, like, I feel like, unfortunately, with those kinds of like Title I school and just kind of that background, knowing the types of the community that attends this school too, um, I feel like it is natural to believe that there's going to be more struggle than not. And so, in your decision to go to this school, going back to kind of your heart, right, of um, systemic education and things like that, did that help you decide to say yes to this job offer?
Yes.
It did.
Yes.
And
Because
so,
I
do
was
you?
like, this is this is really where I wanted to be.
Mm.
And yeah, it was. And I like truly, truly these students and the relationships that like I created with them like are so important. Like they're the most amazing students. And I think it did really bother me when, like people would ask like where I worked and they would like, there's always this like look, even like, when you go
How
somewhere
awful.
and there are these like discounts for like, educators and stuff like, or like school supplies or something. I
Uh-huh.
still remember like I went to Office Depot one time and she asked where I worked and I told her and she's like, oh, like it's always that kind of like look. And it really did upset me because I'm like, these students are so talented, so gifted, and it makes me sad that like people who don't even know have these ideas already about who the student is. And that's exactly why I wanted to go into the profession.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's exactly what is happening today, even like
Yeah.
in the injustice around us, it's like they have these preconceived notions about this particular school. So that's just the reputation of that school. And that's
Yeah.
what everyone thinks about the school. I mean, it's not just the people that live around here, it's
Right.
probably colleges too. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there are, and then it's just they just stay there and that's just it somehow becomes them and then they own it
Yeah.
and they don't need to because that's not who they are and it's just this cyclical thing that happens and
Yeah.
okay, so like you're in this school. I mean, I know, I'm sorry, we're going over our time together. I try to keep it to an hour, but I'm having a lot of fun. So, um
Sorry, I'll share less detail.
no, it's great. We like the details. I love the details. But uh oh, where was I going? Oh, yes. So I know you don't work there anymore, but if you wouldn't mind just kind of speaking about like some of the issues that may have came up as a high school counselor at your first job, because
Yeah.
I feel like these are the stories that I want to tell my own kids, in the sense that it's like you need to understand that like these are real life issues and real life problems that occur at within like people your age, you know, like high school students, elementary school students, middle school students. Like these are all things that, and it's usually I feel like out of the students' control.
Mhm.
But anyways, I guess what I'm asking you to explain is, um, yeah, like what was that first year of working at this Title One school like for you?
Yeah, it was crazy in that it was just so busy every single day, like literally just I felt like I was literally running around all day. Um and so the needs of this school specifically, I think a lot of issues at home and you know, there were students whose families were like facing deportation and so like separation of families, and I think at this school it was a lot of attendance related issues too, because um just because of like transportation and things like that. And so for our students, like if it was a rainy day, we knew that attendance would be low because of a lot of our students walked to school, and you know, there were students who were actually working full-time jobs because they had to and needed to support their families, and so they were missing a lot of school because they like literally had to go work. And yeah, it was a lot. And even for our families and like parents, they were so amazing. They were so grateful for like I would literally be calling them with like not even good news, and they were just so grateful that like someone from the school was reaching out. They would pay for taxis to come to the school for meetings, because they didn't have transportation, but like for them it was important that they be there. um, and you know, I do think it was difficult sometimes, getting in touch with parents when we needed to, just because like phones might be disconnected whenever, we just never knew. And it was a lot. Like our students, I think, were one of like the most resilient, most hardworking. They had so much just going on, that even though they wanted to make school a priority, it just they had so many other things of like, I literally need to survive, and we need to be able to pay for rent at the end of the month. And so that was really tough because, you know, how can I say that again, it's my own bias of school is the most important thing, because like for me growing up, my parents wouldn't even let me like get a part-time job because for me like school was my priority, and that's not the case for everyone. And so yeah, it they definitely dealt with a lot, and like it wasn't the case for every student, but yeah, that was a lot of some of, you know, the needs of our school.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for kind of personifying the school, like the students of the school itself. I feel like until you understand a person's situation, you can't really, you know, like I have no right to pass any kind of judgment. And I think it is unfortunately, right, the human heart's natural inclination to do so. And um, do you feel like your time there, like you did what you wanted?
Yes. It was really tough though, I'm not gonna lie. Like it was a lot, I think, for me just because I felt so helpless because I in my mind, I'm like, I literally cannot help you. Like, I felt like I couldn't do anything for the students when they were just sharing all of these things. And a lot of it, like, I would carry with me. And so, yeah, I really felt like every single day I gave everything that I could, literally, because like but I do think I learned how to set some sort of boundaries, and I
Mm,
think I have to, or else
right.
it's just not
Yeah.
sustainable for me, because when I would leave each day at work, I literally would take 2-hour naps every day because I literally could not even have a conversation with someone after work because I was so drained every
Mm.
day. Um, and so yeah, it was tough, but I'm so thankful that like I had that opportunity there.
So, how long have you been a school counselor now?
This is my 4th year.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, so, you're in your fourth year now, and um, we mentioned before just having to be a mediator and like navigating day to day and, being the middle person for all these conflicts or situations or anything that arises. And you mentioned also just now how you feel in the beginning you felt very drained. How have you like navigated through that up until now? Um, yeah, and I mean, I want to ask you too, like, I'm sure situations come up and you're a big feeler just like I am. Like, how do you detach yourself from what's going on at work and then like not bringing it home with you?
Yeah, I think years 1 and 2 were very like, not very, I won't say very, but I will say I think it was unhealthy in terms of like year 1 was I brought everything home, and then year 2 I think I like really tried to separate myself and almost like became very jaded and hardened very quickly. And so for me, like I have to separate work and then everything else sometimes. So when I'm at work, like I am fully there, I am present, I'm there with the students. And then when I leave work, I really do not think about work. I don't check my email at home. Um, I do my best to disconnect so that I can be my best the next day. Yeah.
Man, I just feel like it would be so tough, but because especially like when crisis come arises and things like that, it's like, um, do personal feelings ever get involved for you? Or I guess you're trained not to.
I mean, it definitely does. Like when, especially when students disclose about abuse, it does. And, you know, it does make me feel a certain way. And, when yeah, like faculty members, teachers, or just other people are not treating students the way that I believe they should be treated, it does upset me. And
Mhm.
so, um, I try to be professional in how I express my thoughts. But yeah, I definitely will say like I do feel a certain way, and I'm not like non-judgmental all the time.
Yeah.
But I won't tell that to the students.
Of course.
But
You can't
in
like
my mind,
convey
yes,
that.
yes.
Yeah.
I'll tell my other like counselor friends like
Right,
this is
right. And they can
how I feel.
Oh man. Well, I feel like I could talk to you for a lot longer, but I will kind of sum it up for us here. Before we end our time together, Diana, was there anything else that I didn't bring up that maybe you wanted to share about?
No, I feel like I talked too much. So
No.
everything. Yeah.
Girl, this is a podcast. Like, I felt like I learned so much about you in just this last hour, and I learned so much about just um yeah, like I think the heart behind you being a high school counselor too. I think I always knew it, but the way you broke it down this time for me, I think really opened my eyes to what drives you day to day, you know? Because again, I don't think this is easy work, you know, and it's there's got to be a different motive, I feel like, to go into work every day other than just like you know, helping people or mediating or whatever. But it's just like, you know, there's more to it. And I feel like there's just going to be even greater things for you for in the years to come too. So, um, what about any advice? Like for people that are listening, maybe high school students, or maybe, you know, actually, I thought about even like people that just like post graduation college, you know, like right out of college. Because you don't have to be a sociology major to go into grad school to get a high school counseling degree, right?
Right. You can literally major in anything.
Yeah. So, like, any advice for somebody that maybe is thinking about going to school counseling or yeah, just in this profession?
Yeah. I would say, you like for me, I think interviewing counselors and also just like seeing what like a day looks like I went in to just shadow. That's always, you know, really helpful in terms of like seeing what we do. You know, if you do have a heart for yeah, the younger generations and even education, and you aren't sure what you want to do, I would definitely recommend just looking into it. It really is super rewarding, and you get vacation
Oh
time,
yeah,
like holidays. You know, it's the
that's
school calendar.
true. That's true.
But no, I yes, it's. I mean, if you really do have a heart, I mean, for yeah, the youth, I would recommend looking into it.
So, you mentioned like shadowing and stuff. Like if people just reach out to counselors, are they open to that?
Yes, they usually are. Now, okay, right now I'll be honest, no, because we're not allowing visitors in the school.
Oh, right, right, right.
But yes, typically yes.
Oh, that's really good to know.
Yes.
Awesome. I did forget to ask you, like, what the best part of your job is. You kind of mentioned it already, but are there other like awesome parts that you really enjoy?
Man, it is 1,000% the students. Like just like I don't know, seeing them grow and mature and like celebrating with them and even like being with them when things are really tough, like it really is the best part of the job. Like even just like I don't know, when for me I think it was really hard when I'm like I don't know if what I even did was significant, but I really do believe that the conversations that I have with students, even if it's like a year from now, 2 years from now, and like they remember that, I believe that it was important. But yeah, it's 1,000% like just getting to know the students and like being with them like in this journey is for sure the best part.
That's awesome. Diana, thank you so much for your time today. I feel honored that you would even spend this time with me tonight. And you know, I'm not just saying this. I'm truly appreciative of your gifting and your investment into the next generation because it is so valuable and not many people have a heart like you. But if you do have a heart like Diana, to invest into the next generation, maybe this is the right career path for you. If you have any questions about high school counseling, school counseling in general, feel free to reach out to me, DM me through social media, or you can email us at podcastwigu@gmail.com. I can get you connected to Diana. She's a really great person to talk to. Or actually, I did have a school social worker on too. And I can also connect you to that person. But anyways, again, if you enjoyed this episode, feel free to reach out and I'd be happy to connect you in any way that I can. Thanks guys for listening. Until next time, bye.